Hello and welcome to the In Publishing podcast. My name is James Evelegh and I'm the editor of In Publishing. My guest this time is Ed Walker, Audience and Content Director for Regionals at Reach. Ed is passionate about local journalism and has worked at many of Reach's publishing sites across the UK. Ed tells us why local journalists shouldn't stand on the sidelines.
I think it's important for local journalism as a whole that we shouldn't always just stand back and say, oh, look at the terrible state of whatever it may be. We need to be offering solutions. We need to be offering ways for readers to show that they are engaging in that topic, be that leaving a comment, signing a petition, whatever it may be. And it probably sounds very old-fashioned, but in a digital environment, that can happen at a tap of a button.
About the competitive challenges facing the news media sector.
We're in a very competitive industry. We're in a very competitive attention space. You think about the amount of things that are competing on your phone for your attention all the time. How can we cut through and make sure that our content is getting in front of you and getting your attention?
And how publishers like Reach can build a sustainable future.
You become sustainable by being relevant to people. If you're relevant to people, then you'll be sustainable because they're willing to read your content, they're willing to engage with you, and they'll stick with you if they feel that you're relevant and they feel that they can trust you. And I think, I like to think our brands are very trustworthy. They're very respected and they're trusted in their communities.
Amongst many other things. But first, a quick word about our valued sponsors. We would like to thank our podcast sponsor, Advantage CS, a leading global provider of subscription and membership management software. Capabilities include marketing, sales, payments, and customer relationship software for publishers, membership associations, and information providers. For more information, go to advantagecs.com. Ed Walker holds two senior positions at Reach. He is Audience and Content Director for the Regionals and also Editor-in-Chief of their Hyperlocal platform InYourArea. On LinkedIn, these are both listed as full-time jobs. He is also Leader-in-Residence for Journalism at the University of Central Lancashire, which I'm really hoping is part-time. Ed Walker, welcome to the In Publishing podcast.
Hello, James. Good afternoon and nice to be with you.
Now, you are, as I mentioned then, you're Audience and Content Director and also Editor-in-Chief of InYourArea, which sounds like two very busy roles. What are your responsibilities and how do you divide up your time?
Yeah, it is a big responsibility, and very proud that Reach put me in both of those positions. It's not uncommon within Reach for people to hold dual responsibilities, and the reason that I'm able to do both of those because I have a fantastic team that I work with and work for me. I look after our network team who work across all of our live network of websites and provide support and content to them. Our late news desk operation as well that provides support to about 25 of our titles. Also have our central video team. We centralized our video operation during the course of the pandemic. And they service the vast majority of our titles with video content. And each of those teams has fantastic managers. Dan Smith, who heads up our network team, Ruth Ovens, our late news desk, and Ben Hurst, who heads up our video operation. I always say, you're only as good as the team around you, and I'm very lucky to have a fantastic team there on the live network. And InYourArea, it's led by our editor Tom Gibbon, working closely with our product team there, and they do a fantastic job. Our InYourArea communities team. So, my responsibilities are making sure that those teams know what they're doing, know that we're heading in the right direction, and I work closely with our audience and content directors in each of the geographic regions. We have some absolutely fantastic senior leaders across our regionals division, and I'm proud to work as part of that team, working on making sure that brands like the Manchester Evening News, our new brands like Sussex Live, are getting to where they need to be in terms of finding a sustainable future for regional journalism.
And of those two responsibilities, which takes up most of your time? Have you Editor-in-Chief of InYourArea or the audience and content side?
That can vary massively day to day, James. It really does depend on what's happening. Sometimes both of those responsibilities come together in certain initiatives. So one thing we're increasingly doing at Reach is making sure that when we do run campaigns, that we're running them across, our nationals division, also our regionals division, and then there's a hyperlocal element to them within your area as well. So sometimes, both of those hats can be worn at once. Other times it's very much being focused on the video aspect of what we're doing, or where we're doing new launches into territories. Then my team will support and make sure that we're giving the support to those newsrooms on the ground to do the best possible local journalism that we can.
And your career to date has taken you around the country. I think you've worked in Liverpool, Cardiff, Reading, and Chester, and maybe other places too. What have been the key milestones and pivotal moments along the way in your career?
I'm very lucky to have worked in, well, when it was Trinity Mirror, I worked in pretty much all of the large regional newsrooms at some point during the early part of my career. And I'm forever grateful for everyone who offered me advice during those periods. I've worked with some absolutely fantastic journalists over many years in Trinity Mirror, and then obviously Reach. I suppose the pivotal points that I would pick out. The first thing would be starting the hyperlocal news site Blog Preston in Lancashire, where I trained at the University of Central Lancashire. I know we're going to talk about that a bit later on. About how I'm giving back to that. Setting up a hyperlocal site there in the space of a year, it growing very rapidly. And I was doing some freelance work as well at that time. And then a role came up at Media Wales, at Wales Online, to join their digital team there. That was back end of 2009, that would have been. And I applied for that. I actually bunked off work that day. I was doing some shift work, and I bunked off for that day and took the long train down from Preston to Cardiff. Had to make that awkward "I'm ill" phone call in the gents' toilets at Crewe Station. And I was interviewed by Mike Hill, who was the head of multimedia at that time, and Tim Gordon, who was the editor of Wales Online. And I landed the job to join the digital team at Wales Online. And I spent nearly 2 years in Cardiff, and that was an absolutely fantastic grounding in not just digital journalism, but journalism in general. A great newsroom to work in, because you've got national titles, you've got Wales Online, you've got the local titles in the South Wales Echo, and at that time the newsroom was just becoming integrated. So you really did work across everything. And it was an absolutely fantastic, training and grounding experience, and I loved every second of being in Cardiff. Um, and then I guess the next sort of milestone for me was moving to London at that point. So I then moved into Trinity Mirror Regional Central team, which at the time there was 3 or 4 of us. There's a lot more now, but at that time that kind of central editorial team was about 3 or 4 of us, and I started to work as part of that, and rolled out RE Scenic CMS at that point. So that took me to newsrooms up and down the country, working with those teams. And I think at that point, very early, in my career, that gave me exposure to lots of different editors, lots of different newsrooms, lots of different ways of doing things. So that when the kind of opportunity came to then be editor in Reading, as we went digital only, in that was back end of 2014. I was only 27, I think, and I was an editor, and I was told, you're turning off the paper and you're going digital only, and here's the team you're going to have. And off we went, and rapidly accelerated the digital audience there. And I was very lucky that I was able to draw on a lot of those experiences that I'd had across the country for the way that I wanted to do local journalism in Reading at that point. And then after that, I've worked in lots of other newsrooms, led lots of other strategic projects for Reach over the years. And I'd say probably the other pivotal one was I went to Birmingham for a couple of months in 2016. It was. And we very rapidly grew the audience of the Birmingham Mail website as it was then, ahead of it changing to Birmingham Live. And that was a very formative couple of months for me as well, working in one of the biggest newsrooms in a senior position. I really enjoyed that.
So at Birmingham Live, you say you grew the audience hugely. What were the kind of the key ingredients to growing the audience?
I mean, this was back in 2016. This was, and we kind of really doubled down on the engagement on the Facebook page at that time. Just really straightforward things like making sure we responded to people's tip-offs and messages really quickly in the Facebook inbox. There's absolutely great stories coming in, and they weren't being spotted and they weren't being turned around quickly because we're kind of operating in a quite a traditional way. So it was just about, there's all these great stories out there. There's always great communities in somewhere like Birmingham, for example, to engage with, and really starting to double down on that, and also make sure that your content editors, your reporters, they're really embracing that digital publishing system and that digital publishing change. And a lot of the time, that's just about taking that extra 5-10 minutes to explain something to someone about why we're doing something, why we're making a change or doing something differently. And we really did start to see the audience move very very quickly at that time.
Now, onto InYourArea, which is, I understand, a hyperlocal news service on a national scale. Can you tell us a bit more about it and how you put it together?
Sure. Well, first of all, I can't take any credit for it, James. I think that's the most important thing. So it was developed in 2017 by Darren Scher, who's now our group product director, and some people who are much cleverer and much smarter than myself, some web developers. And it allows you to put in your postcode. It received some Google DNI funding at that time. It allows you to put in your postcode, and it connects you with news information that's happening very much on your doorstep. And it's grown a bit since 2017. And then towards the back end of 2019, we made a large investment as Reach in it, because we see it as a great way of connecting communities on that really local level. And then 2-3 months after I'd been made editor-in-chief of it, and we were starting to make some changes to it, then COVID happened. And obviously, James, you couldn't go much further than your doorstep, could you? So suddenly, that really kind of hyper-local, really local information became crucial. And InYourArea really came into its own at that point. We were able to, put your postcode in and see the exact COVID picture near you. So suddenly, that kind of the growth plans that we'd had for InYourArea started to happen very, very rapidly. And we've grown that exponentially. We've seen a tenfold increase in our registered users to InYourArea in the space of a year. Kind of what we were expecting to happen with InYourArea, perhaps over the course of 2 to 3 years, happened in a matter of months. And that's testament to the development team, but also the way that it works with our live network as well. It provides that additional information on our live network article pages, so that readers are able to get the crime stats, the COVID picture near them, the weather forecast, what's on information. It's really kind of bringing all that rich information about a neighbourhood together in one place for people to engage with. And we've got some big ambitions for it, particularly around what it can do to kind of enable and connect communities. And we had lots and lots of plans pre-pandemic for it, and hopefully, now, touch wood, I'm actually touching a desk at this point. Touch wood, we are hopefully returning to some sort of normality, which will allow us to now, put some of those plans in place.
So, can you tell us a bit more about those plans, or they're all under wraps?
One of them that I'm happy to talk about is we're really looking at what our What's On offering can look like, both on our live network and also on InYourArea. Nightclubs reopen on the 21st of June. I'm sure you'll be straight down there, James. We're hoping that people are going to people are going to go out again. We're going to actually be able to go to different events and venues and do things. And we had lots of plans in that area, and we weren't able to activate those. So we've got a big overhaul of our What's On offering coming up. We partner with the list.co.uk, who provide a lot of our what's on information. So we'll really be revamping that during the course of the summer. Obviously, hopeful that the roadmap stays in place, and we're able to give that to our audience.
So it sounds like most of the content on the site is pulled together through content deals with third parties, or through from your own network.
Yeah, we pull in content from a whole range of different sources. So we obviously have the content coming in from Reach publications. There's content coming through from third-party publications, big and small, and we send traffic back to those in terms of a traditional aggregator. We also pull in a lot of other sources, so council websites, weather listings, traffic listings. There's lots of different sources that go in to making up an in your area feed, property prices, crime stats. You'd be amazed how much kind of publicly available data there now is, and that's really one of in your area's great strengths, I believe, is it brings it all together into that snapshot view for people to be able to get a view on their postcode.
And I believe you've the site is taking on more of a kind of campaigning role, because I know you've done some work on the trying to prevent the littering of the countryside, and can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I identified when I became editor-in-chief of In Your Area is, um, it does have, although it's a hyperlocal offering, you've got an enormous number of people using it, and so it's a great opportunity where there are kind of local issues that have a national scale, things like littering, for us to really get people mobilized, signing petitions or lobbying about things. So we set up the Don't Trash Our Future campaign last summer. I'm sure lots of your listeners will remember the scenes on Bournemouth Beach during the course of the end of the first lockdown. That sounds weird, doesn't it? But sort of, there's that relaxation, and everyone went to the beach, and then they all left their rubbish behind, and everyone was absolutely fuming and incandescent. And we thought, well, we need to do something about this. So we partnered with Clean Up Britain, and we launched a petition calling on the government to raise the fixed penalty notice for littering to £1,000. It's currently £150, and hardly ever enforced. And so we've got more than 60,000 signatures on that petition now. And I think it's really important that, I think it's important for local journalism as a whole that we shouldn't always just stand back and say, oh, look at the terrible state of whatever it may be. We need to be offering solutions. We need to be offering ways for readers to show that they are engaging in that topic, be that leaving a comment, signing a petition, whatever it may be. And it probably sounds very old fashioned, but in a digital environment, that can happen at a tap of a button. So let's make sure that we're giving people that opportunity. And the great thing about the Don't Trash Our Future campaign is that we have the support of those Reach titles as well. So we're able to embed the petition within that content. So suddenly, reading a story on the Express website or the Manchester Evening News and being irate about litter, you're then presented with this opportunity through In Your Area to go and do something about it. And we've run a number of campaigns during the course of the pandemic, and we're just working with the Mirror actually on a COVID local heroes one, which we're hoping will turn into a special supplement in the Mirror as well. And that's all about celebrating those people who've gone the extra mile during the pandemic. There's been an enormous amount of volunteering. I know so many people who have been COVID marshals or who have done the shopping for their neighbours down the street. And through In Your Area, we can find those really kind of localized heroes, and then we can use the power of the Reach network to give them that national spotlight and that recognition that they so much deserve.
And how does In Your Area as a site dovetail with your other regional sites?
Well, it's a very different sort of content mix. Obviously, it's very, very much concerned with your neighborhood. You put your postcode in and it will show you content specifically about within a radius of where you live. That's quite different to our live network. If you're in somewhere like Bristol, for example, put your postcode in your part of Bristol, and you'll see stories relevant to that area. You might see some wider Bristol coverage as well, Whereas if you go to the Bristol Live site, you'll see a very different content mix. A really basic one is we don't pull any football content through to InYourArea, for example. It's purely about that kind of news and what's on information. Whereas if you go to one of our live sites, you'll see a whole mix from what's on to UK and world news to kind of wider geography news for wherever you are on our live network, to football, to in-depth investigations. Whereas InYourArea is that kind of showcase of that really localized content.
So, I mean, this might be a basic question, but if somebody goes to, let's say, Belfast Live and sees the link to In Your Area in the navigation bar, do you want them to stay on the site, go to In Your Live, or do you not have a preference?
I think that's up to the reader on what they want to do, and I think that's often one of the mistakes that we make as publishers is almost trying to force readers to do something. Give people a choice and let them engage with us in the way that they want to engage with us. For some people, they might be perfectly happy, engaging within your area, and then when they do see things about their local area, that's when they engage more with Belfast Live or wherever it may be. But I think for the vast majority of people, they'll enjoy both experiences. Getting their very very localized news, but then people want that broader view, of everything that's going on in Belfast, and that's why we still have national titles. People aren't just interested in what's going on in their locality; they're interested in what's going on elsewhere as well, and around the world. So, it's really important that people get that whole mix of content, and they're able to access different publishing experiences.
Now, the Live network, I believe, started in 2015 with the launch of Belfast Live, and now I think most of your local sites come under the Live network. How does this represent a change to what went before?
I think it's live by name, and it's live by nature in terms of we run a lot of live blogs. We the content mix is really geared at having that really strong local content, but ensuring that it's reaching a lot of people, and that we don't just run local content on our sites. We recognise that there's a place for UK and world news, and there always has been on regional titles as well. We've got 19 new live sites during the course of 2020, and more to come. So yeah, it's got live in the name, but it's really about making sure that those newsrooms are audience focused, are digitally focused, and that's been the real change that kind of began with Belfast. Was obviously digital only proposition in Belfast that has enjoyed fantastic growth, and all credit to Chris Sherrard, Nathan Hanna, and Ryan Smith and Joanne McGreevy, the team in Belfast. They've done an amazing job there. It's now the largest commercial news website in Belfast, indeed, if not in all of Northern Ireland as well. And they just won the regional press award for best, the best regional site at the Drum Awards as well in the last couple of weeks. So fantastic credit to them, and it all goes back to being responsive, I think. One of the things I remember Chris saying when they set it up was they replied to every Facebook message that they got, and that takes some doing for a regional newsroom. And they were getting a lot of messages, and they still do now. And so I think for me, the live network is, we give people what they want to read, and we find ways to get that content to them, not just through the sites, but through social media, through search, through new and emerging platforms, through email newsletters. It's about making sure that our journalism reaches as many people as possible, and that it engages them.
And in terms of future plans, will all your sites eventually come under the Live network, or will there be some which have a different branding and a different approach?
All of our sites are within the Live network. Not all of them carry that Live banner. Some of them are known just outside of their location, such as Liverpool Echo or Manchester Evening News. They're international brands in their own right. So at this stage, there's no intention of changing those. We are launching new live sites. By the end of this year, we will have every county in England and Wales receiving coverage through one of our live network of sites. And for me personally, that's a huge change from where we were in 2010 when I joined the company, and it's been fantastic to be a part of that growth. And yeah, there's new launches coming this year. We've announced that we're hiring and we're launching in a number of counties, and that's fantastic to see that investment, in local journalism. And obviously we've seen investment now from other publishers in different geographies as well. So it's great that we're investing and we're growing, and it's great to see others growing and investing as well. And certainly does feel like people are really looking at local and going, there's really something there. And I'm pleased that we're doing that, and that others are also doing it as well.
And do you think that that's a change of view when you say people are now looking at local? Were they not doing that a few years ago? And if they weren't, what has caused the change?
Yeah, I think obviously a lot's been written and a lot's been said obviously about print decline. And I think there was always concerns around, will digital pay? And I think we've really shown at Reach that we can launch these digital only propositions and they can pay their way. You look at Belfast, you look at a number of our other sites, we're getting that sustainability now where we're able to then invest in digital roles. And I think that's a really encouraging place to be, that we're able to drive through that programmatic revenue model, and see investment in our regional brands. That's a fantastic place to be, perhaps compared to a few years ago. And there's been a huge amount of work on the commercial side, to see that coming through now. I know you interviewed Emma Callahan recently, who was on your podcast, and our national sales house within Reach makes a massive difference to us being able to invest at scale in our local journalism. And that's a really positive thing for us as a company, in that we have this network of local titles. We obviously have our national brands as well, who we work closely with, but they also recognise the strength of having these strong titles and also these newer titles across the country as well. And being able to start working as one network across Reach has been a really sort of key thing that we've done during the course of our transformation process last year, and we're really starting to see a lot of benefits of that.
And as audience and content director, what would you say are your main goals, your main objectives?
My main objectives, obviously, first of all, is making sure that our teams are happy and healthy. It's not been the easiest year, so making sure that our good people, our people are supported, and that's what I try and do as a leader and as a manager, making sure people are clear on what they need to do. Obviously, we've got our new launches coming, so that will require a lot of effort and support from our teams. So making sure that we're set up for that. We need to strive towards our audience targets that we have, because hitting those ensures we can get that sustainability for where we need to get to. And I think a key thing is always keeping an eye out for new things and new ways of doing things. I think one of our strengths in Reach is that we've been able to adopt new and different working practice quite quickly and scale those across our network. And I always see that as one of my objectives. I need to help people to understand the changes that we're making or the changes that we need to make, and never stop experimenting either. We still have challenges. Every publisher does, and I think the day we stop experimenting is when we'll be in real trouble. So my objectives, looking after our teams, looking after our people, making sure our newsrooms are supported. That's a big part of what my central kind of editorial duties are. Making sure that our newsrooms up and down the country feel they have the support of our teams to go and do the best possible local journalism that they can. And in terms of InYourArea, my objectives there, that's it's still a relatively new brand. Even though it's been around since 2017, we've got a huge amount of work there to do to grow that further. We've had some early success during the pandemic, but we now need to build on that, and really take it to the next level.
And if you look at the entirety of your output across, all your local sites, what would you like to see more of?
I want to see our journalists getting back out there. We've not been able to go do sit down chats in the front rooms of people about human interest stories. That it's not as easy to do that at the moment because of the restrictions, and we know how well those stories do. For me, kind of live coverage out of the scenes, that's the absolute lifeblood of what we do on the live network. We still do that, but I think because of what's happened during the pandemic, we perhaps haven't been out and about as much. And I think that will really start to change, as the restrictions relax and more people are out and about. You've got events to go to cover again. Things starting to happen in those communities to be covered. So for me, I think we'll see that real shift in our output coming back towards that as the restrictions start to ease, because to me that's the lifeblood of what we do, and it's absolutely crucial that our teams are doing that.
You obviously have local journalism in your blood. What is it that particularly appeals to you about it?
I think for me, I think back to when I was a teenager growing up in South London. I can remember I was part of a cooperative that was putting on gigs for young people in South London. And we thought we were very cool at that time, James. We were like sort of 16, 17, and I remember that we got invited onto the BBC London a radio show, and it was Vanessa Feltz who was interviewing us. And I thought, wow, this is cool, isn't it? And I remember speaking to the journalist who'd set up the story, and then he did a bit of a story about what we were doing. And I thought, God, imagine having this to do as a job. And I applied to do journalism at UCLan in Preston and study here. And I just really enjoyed it, and I think we can make a difference with what we do. And sometimes that's a big difference, and sometimes it's a small difference. And I think for me, those are always the best days in journalism, is when you can see what you're doing is making a difference in people's lives. That could be a campaign, or it could just be that you've covered that an event is coming up, and that organizer emails you and says, yeah, we had 200 odd people turn up and we thought we were going to get 6. That you can make a difference in those communities, and that to me, I guess, is what really appeals to me about it.
And if you look back over your career, are there any kind of standout moments of that kind of making a difference? That personal touch. Any kind of instances or incidents which particularly resonate?
Well, I have to wrap my brains now. No, there are
Put you on the spot.
there are a lot. I'd say a lot of what I did in Preston in the early days of Blog Preston, still stays with me. There's a lot of sort of council reporting. Um, ah, there was I can remember covering a planning committee, and all the different kind of objections to it and things like that. And I can remember someone addressing the planning committee and just saying, well, if you've read all those comments on Blog Preston and all the stories on that, you almost have to reject this application. And then I think they did. So I think it just reminds you that people do read what you do. And the worst thing that really annoys my wife is if we go somewhere in Preston and someone spots me and so, oh yeah, you ran that Blog Preston site, didn't you? And then my wife's like, oh God, he's gonna have to talk about that now, isn't he? She hates that. But no, I can remember getting my first front page of the South Wales Echo. I can't actually remember what it was, so that's really bad. But I can remember it took me about 6 months to get on the front page, and I had some fantastic support from David James, who's now the head of news there, and there was a reporter called Pete Law, who really taught me the way to look at council agendas and council documents to find the stories. And that for me, it was like a light bulb went on. I could suddenly read a licensing list and a planning list and find the stories that would be of interest to people. And Pete was Australian, so he told me in no certain terms what a good story was and what a good story wasn't. And I think when you're new in the industry, you need that guiding hand to show you what a good story is and what one isn't.
Now, the recent local elections were obviously a huge news day, I'm sure, for all your titles. What do you think were the standout moments from your coverage of those elections?
It was an enormous effort from our teams, because it was like a double election, because they were rolled over from the previous year. and they seem to go on forever with the with the counting. Behind all good news coverage, there's a spreadsheet. So we had tools from our data unit and from InYourArea that allowed people to see the local results where they were. And we had our reporters and our teams inputting those local results. So that was an enormous effort, and those tools were used and viewed millions of times across our network during that period last week. So I'm really proud of everyone who worked on that project, to take local democratic information and make it readable and accessible for people. Our live coverage was superb, brilliant coverage across our network. Obviously in our large areas like Manchester, for example, we had very, very strong live blogs from different counts that were going on at different councils, and then obviously you've got the mayoral elections as well on the next day. So just the stamina of our teams and to that consistent quality reporting was fantastic. And also seeing a lot of our newer areas that we're covering, like Hampshire, for example, really breaking through with their coverage. Their live coverage was performing really strongly during the course of the local election. So great to see kind of real historic places like Manchester that we've covered for a long time doing well, but also those newer brands like Yorkshire, Hampshire, etc., all coming through with really strong results from their audience numbers on that coverage. So in terms of standout moments, I mean, there's so many from individual reporters, at counts going that extra mile. I think there was one guy covering the police and crime commissioner election in I think it was Devon, and it went on a very, very, very long time, and he was there till the end because that's what we do. You can't leave till the results there. So just all credit to our teams, and again that central support that we have means that we can undertake what was the largest ever set of election results for our teams. Utilizing feeds of content from the Press Association, from our own reporters in the field as well, bringing it all together and making sure that, particularly for our Wales and Scottish titles, that their homepages look like there was a general election going on, because those parliamentary elections in Wales and in Scotland, should be as big as a general election for those devolved nations. So, really proud of everything that went into it. We saw the results in our audience numbers and also in how many people engage with our coverage, either through going through to InYourArea to explore more about the results in their area, or particularly signing up for our email newsletter alerts off the back of our coverage, which allows us to build that direct relationship with our readers away from the social media platforms or through search platforms.
And on reflection, with all the results in and reviewing performance, and which obviously sounds extremely good. Anything you'll do differently next time at the next set of elections?
I think we underestimated how long the counting would go on for, so hopefully we don't have to experience that again. Because of COVID, a lot of the counting was the next day. On the Friday, and then some places split it up into the Saturday. Then there was a Monday. So I think we probably underestimated the impact that would have on our setting up and our staffing. So definitely some lessons for next time. If I imagine some of the councils will want to continue the daytime counting rather than that buzz of the overnight count that perhaps journalists like, but maybe councils and the audience aren't as bothered about because they're not journalists. So I think definitely some lessons there. We probably could have got some of the pre-planning stuff out a bit earlier in terms of our advanced coverage of it. We did do some hustings, so we held virtual. A lot of our newsrooms held virtual hustings through Facebook and other virtual platforms. I think there's even more we could do with that next time, both on our sites and also on social media platforms, to really engage people in local politics. And we also ran a really, I think, interesting pilot project where we took on some hyperlocal election reporters in a number of different geographies across the country where historically there have been very, very low turnout. And we covered those areas with intensity. And we're still looking at the numbers for those places, but whether we've been able to increase the voter turnout by engaging people in local issues. So it's not about getting people to vote for one party, it's about getting people to just vote in their local elections, because turnout is historically low in some places. So I think take some learnings from that, and that might be something that we look to repeat next year on a more wider scale, or learn some lessons that we can weave into our coverage in other places.
Now, as I think we've already mentioned, you were also a leader in residence for journalism at the University of Central Lancashire, where you're obviously, presumably, helping to bring on the next generation of journalists. What advice do you give new journalists coming into the newsroom?
Yeah, I was really honoured to take on that position at UCLan. I've been sort of heavily involved in the course since I left. I think it's important to give something back to places that have helped you. So they set up this leader in residence scheme, and they kind of use us as a bit of a sounding board if they're making changes to the course, or we go back and do guest lectures or panel debates, or work with them on their news days. And I've always found that quite fun, and it's also really useful for talent spotting as well. We've got some big titles in the Northwest, and it's been great to see some people who've come through those UCLan courses then going on to success with Reach, and with other places as well. So take a lot from that. And I remember the people who helped me when I started out, and I think if you can give people that helping hand, they remember it along the way. So I always think that's important. In terms of the advice I give people, is to remember that stories are about people ultimately. So you've always got to try and find that people line to stories. You can getting a planning application, and you look through it and you think, oh well, that's the story. Who's the person behind the planning application? Why are they doing it? Always asking those extra questions and building those contacts and that rapport with people. Not always face to face. A lot of the time, you're doing that over the phone or over email. So it's just a lot of the time it's giving those trainee journalists the confidence to pursue stories that they want to pursue, pick up the phone, ask the questions. And there's always that kind of fear of failure, I guess, and it's making sure that as a journalist you're not scared of the fact that someone might say no and might not get back to you, and they might not get back to you straight away, but they pop up 2 days later. You've got that quote, and suddenly you've got that story on that news list that's leading your website or your paper or whatever it may be, and that's because you had that confidence to ask that question or ask that extra question. So that's the advice I give to them, and also just not narrowing yourself too early. I think there's sort of two schools of thought on this in journalism. People like, find a specialism, find the thing that you love. I'm firmly, I think, in the other camp, which is do the general stuff. Be a more general reporter or more general digital reporter. And then find the thing that really interests you, and then go after that. But I can see the merits in the other route as well. But I do think that kind of being the jack of all trades and having to do stories frankly you didn't want to do, it all teaches you good skills for the years ahead of you, and sometimes in journalism, in life in general, you have to do things you don't want to do, and it's important that you recognize you have to do that.
Now, when it comes to the publication of content, speed is obviously an issue. Getting stuff up there quickly onto the sites. Is there anything you would like to change in the way you in your publishing processes, your workflows to facilitate quicker publishing, or is that not an issue?
I think that's always a challenge for journalists. We'll think we think we're fast, and we want to be faster. um but you've got to be accurate at the same time. I do think there are improvements we could make to help journalists file from the field, particularly as we start to go out more. That's obviously kind of been on the back burner a bit during COVID, because certainly been less of an issue because you're covering a government press conference on a YouTube live stream. That's a bit different. So I do think there's definitely some scope to improve our ability to publish mobile first, or app first, and the tools that our journalists have to do that. We should never be complacent. We should never think that we've got the best possible system for doing anything. We should always be looking at, it's a bit like Formula One, I guess. You can always make that extra tweak to the systems that you've got, and you find that extra bit of performance, because if you don't keep tweaking and finding that extra bit of performance, then others will. We're in a very competitive industry. We're in a very competitive attention space. You think about the amount of things that are competing on your phone for your attention all the time. How can we cut through and make sure that our content is getting in front of you and getting your attention? So the moment that we stop tweaking and we stop trying to make things better, we'll take 4 steps backwards because someone else has taken the steps forward.
All regional publishers are working hard to secure a sustainable future for regional journalism. What does a sustainable future look like for you?
I think for me, it's we've got to really get close to our readers and understand what they like reading, and also not treat readers as just one big bucket of readers. We need to be able to segment for them, both just in terms of the advertising, but also in terms of things that they might want to read and they might be interested in. I think we've got a great opportunity as Reach to be able to do that because we have such a diverse portfolio, and diverse mix of content and also communities that we serve. So we've got a great opportunity there, to find that sustainable future. And I think you become sustainable by being relevant to people. If you're relevant to people, then you'll be sustainable because they're willing to read your content, they're willing to engage with you, and they'll stick with you if they feel that you're relevant and they feel that they can trust you. And I think, I like to think our brands are very trustworthy. They're very respected and they're trusted in their communities. And we should never take that for granted. And we always need to work hard to maintain that. But I think we've shown with the live brand and with its expansion, that we have got a model that is allowing us to invest and become sustainable. So we've got to keep doing that, keep working, and keep tweaking it and learning lessons as we go. And the playing field is always changing, because you can't ignore Facebook and Google. They are where a lot of the audience is, and it's important that we get in front of them. um, Obviously, we seek agreements with those platforms around content, but there's also the fact that we are one of many Facebook pages across the world trying to get attention in that news feed. It's important that we're on top of any changes that are made, and make sure that we're doing it. We shouldn't just pull up the drawbridge and pretend they don't exist. I think that's the worst possible thing that we can do because it's important that our content is on there, and that people are reading it and engaging with it because it's trusted, good local content. So it needs to be on there.
And in terms of revenue models, do you see a future in the subs route? Getting people to pay to access local news.
I think potentially, I think you should never rule anything out. You know, at the moment, it's quite clear that our model is working well for us in terms of building an audience of scale and then an engaged audience underneath that for our customer value strategy. People are registering with our sites, in a number of different ways, through newsletters, through InYourArea, through comments, through lots of different ways. So while we have that audience of scale, we're also building that registered users base underneath it, which forms our customer value strategy. My personal view is I do think potentially there are areas where people may be willing to part with some cash for some premium content, and we have run some experiments in the past on that. But I think there's still definitely the model to be proven there, um, and whether it works out will remain to be seen. But we're confident in the route that we're heading, and I think that increased data that we have about our readers is useful not just for our commercial side of the business, but also for our editorial side of the business. The more we know about the people that we're writing for, the better we can produce content for them.
Now, we might have already touched on this, Ed, but if you look at the wider regional news sector, in its entirety, where do you see the main opportunities?
I think we're showing where those opportunities are with our launches last year, and obviously the launches coming this year as well. I think the fact that we were able to launch uh, three new three new live brands during the course of a pandemic, and also invest in new local roles as well. We see the opportunity being to complete that geographic portfolio for us. That opens up new audiences for us, and new opportunities to engage with them. So that's the route we're heading in, and we've made that commitment. We obviously made the announcement earlier this year that that's what we were doing. Mine and my team's job now is to get the job done with that. I've been working on expanding this live network alongside a lot of our other senior people, for a number of years now. It's time to finish the job in terms of getting all these locations served by our live network. And then that becomes a really exciting proposition that we've got that scale and footprint across, the entirety of England and Wales. We have our Scotland division and our Ireland division as well. And I think that's really exciting, and great opportunities for our own teams as well in terms of their progression. It means that if you work for Reach, you can work anywhere in the country. And I think that's a fantastic asset for us to have as a company. Our regional division, our nationals division, Scotland, Ireland, as well. I think that's a really exciting place to be as a company, and opens up lots of new opportunities as we start to increase the amount of registered users that we've got on our sites.
It does indeed sound very exciting. And finally, Ed, outside of work, a question we ask all our guests: how do you relax?
This is the hardest question, James. I genuinely, I was like, we've just got a new puppy, and so she's 12 weeks now. I've got a 4-year-old daughter. My wife's retraining as a midwife, so I mean, the time I get to relax, I'm not allowed to relax a lot of the time, James. I think for me, I found that really hard during the last year. It's so much harder to relax, especially when, you think back to Halloween and Boris Johnson calls a press conference on Halloween, and I'm there taking my daughter to be trick or treating, socially distanced trick or treating. And then you're getting all these notifications from the team that there's going to be a government press conference and we might be going back into lockdown. And you're like, it's a Saturday night. What is going on? And I'm trying to trick or treat with my daughter. I think, I found that really hard, and I think that's been hard for a lot of our teams, during the lockdown, because your natural ways to relax, going to the pub, taking the family out, even just to a soft play centre. I'm not sure you can relax in a soft play centre, but it's just those natural things can't happen. So I'm very much looking forward to May the 17th and some sort of normality coming back. One thing I do love doing is taking my daughter swimming. I've been taking her with a friend of mine, and he's got a daughter the same age, and we've been taking them swimming since they were 3 months, and they're really confident and competent in the water, and it's just, it's great fun because you can't take your mobile phone in the swimming pool, you can't be contacted, and that for me is, a great hour time slot in the week. Because of COVID, you're only allowed an hour time slot. You've got to be in and out, and all of this kind of thing. And to me, that's always a really nice part of the week that it's like that's a safe part of the week. And also where I am in Preston in Lancashire, we're close to the Lake District, and obviously the Yorkshire Dales as well. Getting out for a walk this Sunday, hopefully with a mate. We're going to do one of the Yorkshire Free Peaks. There's nowhere better to really think about things and chat through things than trudging up a mountain. And I lost my father during the pandemic, and we used to go fell walking a lot. So for me, it's a chance to do something that my dad loved, and bring a memory back, and some very happy ones at that.
Thank you very much for being our guest on the In Publishing podcast.
Thanks for having me, James. Pleasure.
We would like to thank Advantage CS again for sponsoring this podcast. Advantage CS has been developing subscription management solutions for the information industry since 1979. The comprehensive functionality, adaptability, and scalability of its software helps leading publishers around the world manage their businesses more effectively. Find out more at advantagecs.com. Many thanks to Ed for a fascinating insight into the challenges and opportunities facing regional news media. He's surely right that relevance and trust are the keys to a sustainable future. To find out more about Reach's stable of titles, go to reachplc.com. If you want to find out more about InYourArea, then go to inyourarea.co.uk and put in your postcode, and all will be revealed. As Ed mentioned, we interviewed his colleague Emma Callaghan recently. You can hear that podcast and others at inpublishing.co.uk/podcasts. Thank you for listening, and do join me in 2 weeks' time for another In Publishing podcast. Bye for now.